Emily, why should people listen to you to the end of this episode?
Oh, well, I hope that they just get excited about hearing how to make presentation and storytelling easier. I love sharing my zone of genius to help somebody else shine brighter, be more confident, and just make their job easier. That's what I do, but I also love sharing how other people can do that. So I hope that people will listen to the whole thing so that they can take away all the tips and tricks that I love to share.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds perfect. I believe they will. So, ladies and gentlemen, whomever is listening or watching, joining us today is Emily Schneider, a PowerPoint design expert, visual storyteller with nearly 2 decades in marketing and branding. Emily excels turning complex content into impactful presentations that blend storytelling with captivating visuals. So our journey basically began as designing Sweet 16 invitations, which I believe she might want to share, which has now evolved into a career focused, like empowering clients to deliver messages confidently through strategic and beautiful design presentations. Thank you so much for joining us, Emily.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here.
So, ladies and gentlemen, whomever it is that you're listening, this is the part where we shamelessly ask you to subscribe. We try to filter the best and bring the best guests on in air. So subscription, likes, shares, comments encourages us to go look for the people who would make your life better. So let's just go straight right into it, Emily. So this question is about founders. As a founder myself, how can founders and business leaders integrate storytelling into presentations to effectively communicate their ideas to their larger team or their investors? What is the impact of that?
Oh, that's a really sweet question. I love that because I think that as a business leader, what I have found is that it's all about creating meaningful change, right? It's telling a story that connects with your audience, that builds that trust, that credibility, and ultimately creates a really tight connection and allows for intentional conversation. And when you can lead that conversation and you can share what you need to with your audience appropriately, and they're engaged and they're listening, and like I said, they trust you and you created that credibility, it's so much easier to make those impactful business decisions or to have those conversations. A well-crafted story can really take a lot of the weight off of what you're saying and allow you and your audience to connect and see the same thing. So we all can hear something, and the picture that we see, you can do that exercise of like, close your eyes, I'm going to describe something for you. And what I end up, and then if I hold up a picture, what you thought is probably going to be different than what I was describing. We just all interpret information differently. But when we share things visually, we're 65% more likely to retain information. So as a business leader trying to lead meaningful change, when you can visualize your story, and it doesn't always have to be just pictures. It could be the way, we talked about, like having just a really sleek and well-designed presentation and copy. You really do yourself such a service by guiding your audience along to listen to you intentionally.
Yes. It's very rare when some people love to read, some people love to listen, but in a situation whereby you put people in a room where they can see and they can hear, it becomes much more harder for them to lose information both ways. They might get it visually, and they might get it by audio. But when presentation gives you that opportunity to pair the two together. And the second question is much more towards job seekers. Because I have a story to share on this, how they can leverage professional presentations to land roles that they desire. What are the creative ways in which job seekers can leverage presentations or visual storytelling to be able to get the kind of roles that they aspire to.
I love that question, but do you want to share your story first?
Okay. All right. Let me go on a tangent. Growing up in an agency, my manager, she's my mentor. She used to tell me that the moment you start treating yourself like a business, then you will be able to convince your clients that their business is safe for you to handle. That's just the way it seems. So when I moved over to the UK and being an immigrant, business, getting employment, continuing from where I stopped in Nigeria, West Africa, was a bit harder than because I didn't grow up here and all of that. I sat down on my bed. I now remember that, wow, I'm trying to get these jobs. Why don't I treat myself like a business? And it hit me that for every business that I want to get, when we're in the agency, we usually prepare a pitch deck. That was how I created my first ever presentation. So here's it. We're coming out of a lockdown then, and interviews moved from physical to virtual. And anytime I go into, I'm fortunate to get into an interview room, the first stage interview, probably with an hiring manager, and they ask me, tell me about yourself. The first thing that comes out of my mouth, rather than telling you, I think I should show you. Do you mind if I share my screen? And they said, okay, yeah, go for it. And I go there and I click them through like 3, 4, 5 slides tailored to the job description and things like that. So what I knew that I might not be the most experienced, I might not be the one that will be the like for like, apple for apple person for the role in some cases. But what that did for me was that it increased my chances from the first stage to the second stage significantly. You know why? Because when they're trying to review their notes, they'll remember, oh, the presentation guy, what do you think about him? So everything is just like basically marketing. At times you see an ad so fantastic, you might not remember what the actor said, but the richness of his voice, that's all you can remember about the commercial. And that was the approach that I took, and that's the approach I've been taking. And interviews are just very easy, but this is something that many people don't know you can actually do. So I actually want to know your thoughts around that. That's my story.
I think that story is amazing. You know what you did is you created value for yourself. And not only did you showcase your value, right? You didn't just say it, you created an emotional connection for your audience. You gave them something to think, to feel, and to do. And when you can create that empathy, and especially when you add that creative overlay, you create memories. You make a memorable mark. I just heard this awesome story. I'm reading a book called Sell with a Story. And the author was telling about how he saw this strange picture at an art show, and his wife fell in love with it. And she was an artist. She had the art eye, and he was not. And he was like, why am I going to spend all this money on this picture of these pigs? Well, then the artist said the whole story about why these pigs are swimming in this water and the whole background. And all of a sudden, this picture of this weird pig swimming in the water became this really meaningful experience and moment and testament to this pig's journey. And he said he was willing to spend whatever it cost, because when you can transform something that is facts and information and create that authentic connection, you leave a mark. Again, we don't remember bullet points. We remember the way we felt and what we and how we interpreted that information. Our brains do a really good job of connecting the puzzle pieces if we give it to them. And so a well-crafted interview pitch, to your point, showcasing your work is so important. It gives you breath. I think as a creative, I've always had to have a portfolio. So I've always had to say, let me share my screen, right? Or have you seen my website? But I'll tell you that from my own journey, when I get on discovery calls with clients, they can see my work, But when I can tell them and explain to them and create a human behind what is happening, and I'm not a robot, and it's not facts, it's not just I grew up here and I went to school here and I worked on these brands, I made an impact. What did I get excited about? What was the thing that moved my work forward? And for me, it was always the connection with the end user. And so to your point, when you can find your little niche and you can put that into a story, you create that connection for whatever type of presentation you're giving. I have a little story too. I helped a family friend who was interviewing for a job at a company, and he reached out to me and he said he was going into sales. And so he had to create like a mock sales deck that he would give, and he had it all laid out. But you know what he did? And I just helped clean it up, to be honest. And he got the job. It's amazing. He's so happy. And I'm so happy for him. But he had a little bit of his personality come through. And that's what you're saying. And that's what presentations are about, whether it's you as a person, whether it's your brand personality, whether it's your product, you give life to it. You create a reason for having this conversation. We're used to creating personas. We want connection. I think that's one of our most universal truths, right? And so when you can create that connection through a platform that usually is looked at as black and white, you really are challenging the norms and you're going to stand out. So I love those. I think that's so powerful. Yes, I think it's important to give yourself a persona that lets somebody connect with you on a human level and not a bunch of I can accomplish this. You know, that presentation took your resume and it created a person behind it and that meaning and you gave stories for them to remember. We remember stories. We don't remember all the details.
Wow. And I've actually not thought about it like that because I'm a very analytical person. I just wanted to maintain top of mind. And that's what anyone who is watching or listening today, I want you to take out of this. We don't always remember the details. We remember the story and how the story made us feel. How many of you knew the color of the dress that Rose was wearing on the door at the Titanic when everyone was sinking? No, we can't remember the color of the dress, but we remember that moment where she was saying, "Don't let go, don't let go, don't let go." So thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. So now let's go into a little bit. What are details on this? What are the essential elements that a successful PowerPoint presentation should have that a business owner or a business lead can use to impress their clients or use to impress their bosses or something? What are the things that you need to show? Yeah.
I break it down to 4 tips and I can go into them. But please stop me because this is where I get really excited about things. So sometimes I go way down deep tangents. So let's make sure it's a conversation and not just me talking. I just want to be super transparent. Okay. My 4 tip. It's about starting with your audience, understanding who they are. We already talked about that, right? You want to know what you want that person or people or group to think, to feel, and to do with your presentation. It's also important to know where you're going to be delivering it. Now, you might not always know if it's a boardroom or how big it is, but you're going to know if it's a Zoom. You're going to know if it's a big conference room, right? A big event, or if it's a smaller team meeting, because that kind of level of information helps you know how much detail to include when you write your story. So you want to start with your audience in mind. Again, it's all about that emotional connection. What do I want them to think, to feel, and to do at the end of my presentation? The next step is crafting your narrative. This is the step that I always encourage my clients to actually shut their computers. I like Post-it notes. Get out Post-it notes, get out Sharpies so you can't erase it. Start putting ideas down and let your creativity flow. When you get off the computer and you get your hand to paper, right? You really get that stuff just to flow. There's no wrong answers, but with Post-it notes, they're small, so you can only write 1 or 2 things on a Post-it note. Get a new Post-it note. Then you start to see how your story is going to come to life and what are these key points that you want to talk about. Because it's really important that we craft our stories in really simple and with flow. And the flow should be just like when you know your audience, you know what you want them to do at the end. You start with the end in mind. You're going to set up your story well, not only welcoming your audience, but explaining why they're there and what the goal of that meeting is. And then just like a traditional story, you go from the beginning to the middle to the end. So the beginning is going to remind people what the topic is, what the data or where you left off last time you had that conversation, what you're bringing, where you're going to kind of lead them to in a way, right? You're kind of setting that scene. Then you go into the middle, which is the heart of your presentation. This is where all the data, all the information, your personal stories will come to life if you're doing that, if it's like in an interview, those kind of things. But it's really, that's the meat of your presentation. It can be the longest section. Each section doesn't have to weigh the same, but this is where the facts and that information is really backed up and shared. And then you wrap it up. The end is the summary. It's reminding people what you shared. It's giving those top bullets. Again, that's where those Post-it notes and that outline is really important as you lay things out. And it's giving that call to action, and it's reminding them what you want them to do or to think or to, act upon at the end. So you wrap that up. You help do the heavy lifting for them with your narrative. Does that make sense?
It makes a whole lot of sense. So a follow-up question to that would be, does the industry or the kind of audience really determine the flow or the design that you'd be using for your presentation? Or it's just like you have a framework that you just shared now, and that framework is pretty much consistent across any kind of presentation that you want to do?
I think the framework is consistent. The way your narrative lays out from the end, starting with the end in mind, then the beginning, the middle, the end again, is always there. But how much detail you put into it, what you say, how you engage them, right? How you create that connection, what's important to them is gonna be based off your industry, what your topic is, and who you're talking to. And how you design it, again, because there's this triangle, and I actually have a one-pager on my website that we could direct people to after, but like think about it as a triangle where at the bottom, those are your peers. Those are people who are kind of on the same level as you when you're sharing information. And then as you go up the pyramid, it gets narrower, and that's where leadership and senior management and key decision makers, right, kind of start to come in. They don't always need to know all the details of your day-to-day, let's say, right? They just need to know the top line. So if you think about where that person falls within a hierarchy of leadership, that kind of helps to determine how much information to give. But the structure of your story is going to stay the same. It's just how far into the weeds, let's say, you're going to do it. Again, when I used to work in an agency, when I worked with somebody and I was doing something and they were at the same level, we talked about all the details. But when I went to my manager and I explained our concepts, we talked about the higher level, right? They didn't need to know how we built it or what it was rooted in, because that was part of the work that we were showing. So I think there's that balance. And when it comes to design, that's actually the third part, is designing your story. It's a combination of understanding who your audience is, what they need to know, how they need to interpret information, how you personally enjoy or what your preferences are, and then what that brand is. And again, the brand can be your personal brand, it could be your product, it could be the company. But you kind of have to take that all into consideration as you design. But when we design, or when I design, I think of it as three basic kind of intentions and principles. It's about simplicity, consistency, and intentionality. And as you look at your whole story in each slide, you want to think about what are those key topics you're going to talk about, 2 or 3 things per slide, making sure you have white space. You're going to think about your content and your text. So headlines, being concise, text, bullets, information. Less is always more. You only want like 30 words on a slide, 6 to 8 bullets. There's a beautiful exercise I always encourage my clients to do, which is keep cutting copy until it doesn't make sense anymore, and then you bring the last word back in. It works really well for bullets and for headlines. Also, though, now we have amazing tools like ChatGPT and AI, and those guys, though, that's a great partner when you're writing your presentations. Use it to help streamline. Like, take some of that heavy lifting off you. AI isn't perfect, but it's a great tool and a resource. And then also being, choosing fonts and using them and treatments consistently. So headlines, same placement, same font, same weight, bullets, same treatment, same colors. Those kind of simple, intentional, simple and consistent choices really make an impact to elevate the way your story is interpreted and your information shines. And then the third part about designing your presentations is the visuals. Visuals, though, do not always have to be pictures. Visuals can be photos. And if you choose photography, I encourage people to pick photography and options that look like they're part of the same series, right? It doesn't have to be the same people in the photo, but is the lighting the same? Is their coloring? Is the perspective of the camera feel like it's all from the same kind of photo shoot or same, again, series? And if not, turn things black and white. It does that's a simple trick to make color kind of feel cohesive, right? Again, consistency is so important because our brains will connect the dots when we do the heavy lifting for it. But then beyond just photos, you could have icons, you can have illustrations, data can be designed, type can be designed, but it takes that intentional and simple approach of what are the key things I want to talk about. As I put less on a slide, I'm going to know what to focus on. And then I bring that to life in different ways. You don't need to have all the information. You don't need to overdo the icons. Do one icon per bullet if you can. If not, one icon per section. Or when it comes to data, I always say, do I need to show every single month in a calendar year? Or can I just show every other month? Can I get rid of the x-axis information and still show and highlight what I want to say? Can I colorize things so that I'm focused on the right information? Again, if you design it with your key takeaway in mind, your audience will automatically see that first, and you take a lot of that heavy lifting off of you as a presenter. I think I hit that all. Any other questions on the visual? Oh, colors. Colors are colors. So simple, less is more. It goes with fonts too. 2 or 3 fonts per the whole deck. Use the same fonts throughout. Colors as well. Limit your color palette and then use the same color palette or colors associated with this information. So let's say we're talking about a quarterly update on a product. Every time we talk about product A across all 4 quarters, it should be in that color. Every time we talk about product B, it should be in that color, no matter what slide I'm on. And that can come from charts, that can go from icons, and that's, and data. Again, not too much, but enough where you connect the story visually. And when you can visually connect that story, your audience is going to pay it. It's easier for them to follow along. They're going to be more engaged. Again, we're 65% more likely to retain information when it's designed. So that color association, to your point, I might not remember what dress she wore, but I'm going to remember that there was a color associated with each of those products in each quarter. And that's going to help me see what the success was or whatever that metric is.
Awesome. This is pretty much like a masterclass at this point. When I create presentations, I really apply myself, and the details, some of the things that you mentioned, like consistency in colors, trying to call out the ideas and all of that, are things that I don't have in my arsenal at the moment, but I will definitely look into that. Now, let's step away a bit from the creation itself, which is the presentation. That is just one part. The second part is the human being itself, is the person that is presenting. What are the things that because this is like an off-the-dome question, so what are the characteristics or the things that you need to do to prepare yourself well for a presentation in terms of verbal cue, gesticulations and things like that? Just tell us about that. Good.
Yeah. Okay. So that actually leads into I didn't even get to the 4th tip, which is about the delivery, but that's exactly right. So just to be super transparent, my focus, my expertise is in the design part of that 4-step process, right? I will help clients identify their audience. I'm a really good rule refiner. So I'm really good at refining copy, but I don't create copy. And I will help give some tips about delivery, but I just want to make sure like everybody knows, like I'm not the expert I'm not a presentation coach. However, I do a lot of work around it. It's just natural, right? And I do my own presentations to your point. Okay. When it comes to presentations, my number one tip is just plan ahead. Give yourself the time to craft your story, to design it, and to practice it. And that is actually part of my own personal process with my clients is I have a 10-day minimum, and it does exactly that for both parties. It allows me time to process their deck or their information and to design it well back and forth, but it also gives them time to think about it, to curate it, to get comfortable with it. Because when you are confident in what you're sharing and when you have designed it to hit and to focus on your key takeaways per slide, your confidence is boosted. It's so much easier to be authentic in that presentation, to be, to plan what you're going to say or to not read. We never want to read all the words on the slide. You don't want you don't want your voiceover on the slide. They call that death by PowerPoint. So if you can pull that out and you can visualize that, you tell a story. But it takes practice. It takes rehearsing. You mentioned a masterclass. I actually host some master classes a bit to train people on presentations. And for a 30-minute presentation, I mean, the amount of time I worked with a friend on it that we practice. And every time we talked about it, it was different. But you have to be comfortable with the information, and it can't be totally scripted because you sound like you're rehearsed and you lose that authentic connection. So your slides should kind of be the background music. Think about like when you go see an orchestra, the conductor stands up on stage and he helps lead right? He creates the music. He tells the instruments and the sections when to play, when to get loud, when to get soft, and he creates this beautiful, harmonious experience. When you have well-designed slides, they are your background music. They are your orchestra parts, and you become this conversation conductor. And so when you practice, there's a lot of practice that goes into those orchestras, right? And working together and figuring out what is my natural page click. I mean, some of that's personal, the idea people say like, do I click animations? Does it automatically go forward? That's a personal preference of how much you're in control and how ready you are. But I don't know about you, but the worst presentations I ever see, were prepared the night before. Somebody didn't give them the thought. And so they kind of share everything and the kitchen sink because they're not confident in knowing what their story is. And so they believe that if they overshare, they're going to actually like sound like they're more intelligent, but really it's less is always more.
Okay. So practice.
It's planning and practice. Like literally it is. It's creating that calm space so that you can be confident, so that you know that material. It's not about having it memorized. It's about it's creating that symphony, that orchestra, and letting it come to light the way it should.
Basically, just be a rock star then.
Yeah, sure. Cuddle it. That's what rock stars practice, right? Like nobody shows up and is perfect the first time. I have young kids and can't tell you how many times we talk about that. Like my son's into sports. Even we just had the World Series. The best players made errors, but they still showed up the next inning and did better, right? Like we're humans, but it takes practice. You have to get the fundamentals right. And that's where preparation and planning come into play. And if you don't give yourself the time, you're going to do a disservice to yourself. I mean, there have been many times where I unfortunately have had to tell a client, I need another day or two. I'm just not ready. And I know you can't always do that when you're delivering it. So you got to back into it properly.
Okay, awesome. I think we've captured a lot. So tell us one memorable project that you designed that has significantly helped the business, and after then, just tell us where we can reach you if we need to reach you.
Yeah. So I shared the story about my friend who got his job because he elevated his presentation. But I have a client specifically who we worked on their pitch deck, their investor pitch deck. It was about 2 hours of his time for a 20-slide deck for us to build it from a white paper outline into a full crafted presentation. Within one meeting, he had a $300,000 investment secured. So that was he had a $5,000 for my project was $5,000 invested in the design piece, and in one usage of that deck, he had a $300,000 investment. I want to say that's like a 300% ROI or something. Maybe it's 60 times. We need to look at those numbers exactly, but I was like flabbergasted, and I was so excited for him because, again, he literally used it the day after I delivered it. So I can't, so that ROI, it's limitless. Like, people sometimes get scared to invest money, and I get not every presentation has the financial backing, but the time, when you give yourself the space, return on investment is really, really big, especially when you think about how often you can use a similar deck, right? You can repurpose things. So it's really powerful. So I think that's a good answer for that one. Where to find me? So you can see examples of my work and learn more about me on my website. I am emilyschneider.com. I'm also super active. I love connecting and networking on LinkedIn as well. So it's a great spot.
All right, good. So thank you so much, Emily. This is the reason why I do this. I come into this kind of conversations with an open mind. I'm not coming here my podcast. I want to be a presenter. I'm coming here to learn, and quite frank, as a founder myself, that I'm always speaking to investors and things like that. And also someone who has a 9-to-5 that reports to management and things like that. I find myself creating decks every now and then, and I noticed that from what you said, I don't give myself enough time to practice. And I think for every time that I significantly put so much effort into the practice, I enjoy the presentation more. Forget the audience this time around. I enjoy the presentation more because it's like I'm just having a chat with somebody that's interested in a story that I have to tell. I'm not trying to convince them because I'm already convinced in what I'm trying to say. So thank you so much. Do you have any questions for us before we leave?
No, I just say all that really proves, right, is that when you are confident in what you're doing, it shows. And to your point, it's not really about the other person anymore, because when you're confident, it radiates. It's really clear. I say part of what I love and why I think I'm happy to say I'm an expert in my field is this is my zone of genius. I get to do what lights me up. That makes me the most confident. I know I'm good at this. I know there are a lot of great presentation designers out there. Nobody is me. That's what makes me unique, and I'm not them. But what makes it even better is that I get to shine in my zone of genius. I get to share my confidence with the world. And by doing so, I help my clients do the same. To your point, they're more confident. They're going to shine brighter. So if we can all kind of show up and be a little bit of a brighter light, the world's going to be a better place.
Yeah, the world will be a better place. And I would like to end it on that note. Thank you so much. So anyone, whenever it is that is listening, you're welcome. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this exciting episode. And I'm sure you guys, the energy here is quite good, and I'm sure you really felt that listening to this as well. My name still remains Mahmoud Olabikesha. We just spoke with Emily Schneider, and thank you so much for listening. On to the next one. It could be peace.